What's up guys? Welcome to the video. So with me here today is a very important car and a very special car from Volkswagen. This is the Volkswagen ID3. Alright, so let's talk ID3. What makes this car really special from Volkswagen? Okay, so the ID line in Volkswagen's lineup is a separate brand for electric car. So this ID3 is actually built from the ground up as an electric car, and hence the name ID3. Okay, so what makes this car really special for Volkswagen? Okay, so Volkswagen has been known for famous and really iconic cars like the Beetle and the Golf and others. Especially the Golf, for example. The Golf has actually, since its inception, the Golf has actually sold more than 35 million units worldwide. It's actually one of the best-selling cars ever seen in history. And Volkswagen plans to achieve that with the Volkswagen ID3. That is what makes this car special. This car has been built to be the next Golf. In fact, it has been shaped like the Golf, although it's much more shorter and a little bit thinner than the Volkswagen Golf. But then it's an electric car, which means that there's going to be more internal and interior space because there are no engine components in this car. Okay, so let's talk about looks of the Volkswagen ID3, starting with the front of this car. From a design perspective, I mean, look at the front of this ID3. It's just a simple and nice and cute, friendly design from Volkswagen. It's just nice, nothing crazy for the design going on in the front of this ID3. And this same design scheme has been carried around all over this car. There's no much crazy design, no much lines. Of course, it's an electric car, so there's no huge front grille up in front of this electric car. You just have this opening here, which is actually used for cooling the batteries when they get hot, which is actually nice. Okay, so in front of this ID3, you actually have your LED lights here, which are actually good. Then there's also an LED light bar here, which accentuates the friendly nature and, you know, the futuristic nature of this ID3, which is this light bar here, and then the white Volkswagen logo, which is actually good. There's no much crazy line here in the front of this car. So some things worth mentioning, or some noteworthy things on the front of this car, are the headlights. So the headlights are actually LED headlights. They're actually dynamic headlights from Volkswagen, which Volkswagen calls its IQ light. Nice naming for the light of the ID3. And so inside this lights, you actually have the main headlight unit of this car. There are some diamond patterns in the headlight of this car. That's not the only crazy thing about the headlight of this car. Now, the headlight of this car, the main headlight unit actually looks like an eyeball, and it actually does something when you lock and unlock the car. When you unlock the car, the ID light actually goes up and looks left and right, like it's scanning the environment before it comes on, which is actually a nice design feature from Volkswagen. I really love that. The lights are actually really nice and bright and are really good. Yeah, so nothing really crazy in the front of this ID3. I actually like the way the roof slopes down, gives it a really nice and city-like nature, which is actually great. All right, so let's move over to the side of this car and the back and see how it is and see what Volkswagen has done in the design department of the ID3. All right, this ID3 also has a neat and clean design along the sides of this car, which is actually good. I love the design line of this car, which gives it some character. Aside that, you have this contrasty bronze color scheme going on the side of this car, which actually gives it some character, which is actually nice. Aside that, there's nothing really special, no really crazy line or crazy design. These huge 19-inch wheels, and I love the design of the alloy wheels of the ID3, which is actually nice. And the design of the alloy wheels are actually designed to match the color scheme of this ID3, which is actually great. What I'm not so keen on the back of this ID3 is this sticker here on the back of this ID3. Not really keen on that, but then it just gives it some distinct characteristics for the ID3. I also love the back end on this ID3. It actually ties in this nice and simple and less complicated design of the ID3 with actually this nice LED brake lights up here in the ID3 and this nice spoiler, which is actually good. It's just a simple design over here at the back of this ID3. Nothing really crazy, no any fake vents or diffuser thingy going on around the ID3, which is actually nice. It's just a nice, clean design. Now, getting to the boot of the ID3 is relatively simple. It's this Volkswagen logo here. You just press the Volkswagen logo and it opens up the boot of this ID3. And the boot space of this ID3 is actually nice. It's actually bigger than that of a Golf because, of course, there are no engines or internal combustion materials to occupy space. So it actually has a nice and usable boot, which makes this ID3 a really practical car, which is actually good. The charge port is comfortably located at the right side of the rear of this ID3, which is actually really nice. The ID3 I have here is the ID3 Pro, which means that it has a 62 kilowatt hour battery capacity, but Volkswagen actually gives you a 58 kilowatt hour of usable battery capacity. So to open the charge port of the ID3, you actually press on this and it actually opens. It can actually charge from 10 to 80% in about 35 minutes, which is actually great for this car. It's nice and actually conveniently located. And for the power of this ID3, we'll be seeing that when we drive the ID3. So keep watching this video, and if you haven't, consider subscribing to this channel, like this video. The ID3 is actually a great car. So let's go on with the video. Okay, so the interior of the ID3 is actually nice and sensible. Inside the interior of this ID3, very, very nice design and layout. Classic Volkswagen for you. I mean, this interior, there's almost no physical buttons in the interior of this ID3, which actually has some drawbacks. So continue watching this video and we'll find out the drawbacks of having less physical buttons in this interior. But all in all, the interior space in this Volkswagen ID3 is still really, really nice. I mean, the sitting position of the ID3 is really great. I love this driver's digital display just right in front of the view for the driver. Although it's a really small driver's display, it's about 5-inch display for the driver, but it actually contains most valuable and important driving information. Okay, so another thing I like with this ID3 is this driver's display has actually been attached to the steering column of this ID3. So if you want to adjust the steering wheel up or down, this whole thing actually moves with the steering. This is actually nice, so that when you adjust the steering wheel, it's not going to obscure the view of the driver's information display. So mounting it on top of the steering column is actually a very nice and a thoughtful design from Volkswagen. Really, really good. So the steering wheel is actually adjustable. You can adjust it up or down, in and out, which is actually good for getting a very great driving position. The interior color is just actually so nice and friendly in the interior of this Volkswagen ID3. I love the color choice or the color scheme in this ID3. From the white steering wheel, which actually matches the color of my shirt, which is nice. Yeah, the interior is actually solidly put together. I mean, this center console here is actually nice and well placed. And due to the fact that this car doesn't have a transmission tunnel, you actually have a nice and airy feel in this ID3. And also, you have individual adjustable armrests, just like you have like in the Range Rover, which is really convenient. It's a nice convenient feature. I also like. So talking about space, you have two nice cup holders, which is actually nice. A nice cubby for placing your key, and also a nice slot for putting your phone, which actually has wireless charging. There's an openable storage space in the middle here with two USB ports, actually USB Type-C, an adjustable tray, which is actually nice. There are actually some noteworthy interior features in this ID3 which are really bad from Volkswagen. Say for example, in your normal conventional car, up on the door here you have 4 window switches for controlling the 4 windows of this car. But in this ID3 you actually have 2, and then you actually have a button marked rear. So to control the rear windows of this ID3, it's actually a 2-step process. You need to first press the rear switch here. There's a switch marked rear here, which is not actually like a real button. It's like a capacitive touch button, which sometimes doesn't really respond to touch. It's just not so great in practice. I mean, the concept of this feature is actually nice. That means having less or fewer buttons in the interior. But having a 2-step process to control the rear windows of the ID3, it's a no-no for me. Volkswagen, please, you can do better than this. Another gripe I have is with the infotainment system. Okay, so the infotainment system is actually clear, nice. I love the position of the infotainment system angled towards the driver, which is actually easy for using. But then some of the controls in the infotainment system, in concept, they're actually nice. but in execution, they are not actually great. Say, for example, the volume controls in this infotainment system. It's kind of an adjustable slider, which you need to slide your hands over to the left or to the right to increase the volume. You can either slide or you can tap. Same thing for the temperature control. You can either slide or you can tap, which is great. But then on a rainy day, you get into the Volkswagen ID3 and your fingers is actually wet or your hands are actually wet. These touch controls, they are not always responsive actually. They're not really responsive, especially when you want to adjust the volume control or if you want to adjust the temperature, which is not actually nice. I need Volkswagen, please improve on that. But then the infotainment system is actually nice, really great and responsive with actually nice sub-menus to it. You actually have, menus on your radio settings and, it's a generally nice infotainment system to use. You actually have a nice array of buttons at the bottom of this infotainment system, and they are still not physical buttons. They're actually touch capacitive buttons. You actually have your menu button, which is like a shortcut if you want to just go straight into the menu of the ID3. The next button is the button for the climate control or the button for the heating system of the ID3. It's kind of like a two-step process to adjust, say, the fan speed. There's no physical button for you to just twist to the left or to the right to adjust the fan speed. You actually have to press the climate control button of the ID3, go into a sub-menu, then you can be able to adjust the fan speed of the ID3. The next button is your assist buttons for the driving assist function of this ID3. It actually has blind spot monitoring, lane keeping and distance control driving features. And over to the far right of these buttons here are your mode control buttons. So of course this mode just controls, you can actually put the ID3 into eco mode, sports mode or comfort mode, which is just actually nice. The infotainment system actually has proximity sensor. So when it detects your hand coming close to the screen, it actually pops up valuable information on the screen. It's relatively easy to use and the dials are actually nicely laid out. So there are some light schemes in this Volkswagen ID3 for you to change different interior lighting combination of the ID3. You actually have, depending on your mood, you can choose between Infinity, which is some kind of orange theme, Eternity, Desire, Euphoria, Vitality, which is actually nice, or you can choose to customize it individually. This ID3 actually has 64 different lighting combination, which it's actually good. The infotainment system is not a really snappy infotainment system, but it's averagely responsive, which is okay. And also in the sub menus of the infotainment system, you have another sub menu for your driving assist function. One thing about this driving assist function is that it's actually nicely laid out, and with the proximity sensor, when it detects your hand coming close to it, any function you click would show you its driving functions that you want to configure in the ID3, which is also really, really nice. And then you have your radio control settings. And of course, this ID3 comes equipped with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So if you don't want to use the user interface from Volkswagen, you can just hook up your Android phone for your Android Auto or your Apple phone for your Apple CarPlay, which is actually also nice. There's actually nice graphics in the map of this ID3. It's actually easy to set in a destination in your ID3. You just click on destination and you click on search and you type in your destination, which is actually really, really nice. So the gear selector of this ID3 is actually up on the steering column. So you want to select into drive, you kind of twist the knob forward. You want to select into reverse, you twist the knob backward, and neutral is kind of like a half twist, and then park is pressing the P button, which is actually very easy to use. And for the fact that it's been mounted on the steering column, it also adjusts when you adjust the steering up or you adjust the steering down, which is actually good. Over on the left side of the steering wheel are your light controls. There are some capacitive buttons where you just press them and you get some feedback. But in nice interior space. Now there are some Easter eggs that I want to mention about the Volkswagen ID3. Over on the pedal of the ID3, the accelerator pedal is actually marked with a sign play, and the brake pedal is actually marked with a sign pause, which is just like a nice design, feature from Volkswagen. The ID3 also has a nice and dope feature which is called the smart key function, or which is called the smart go function. Apart from the ID3 actually unlocking when you approach the ID3 with the keys in your pocket, to start the ID3 is a relatively simple and quite convenient functions. So with the keys in your pocket, you don't need to push the start button here over on the steering column. It's just a redundant control. To actually start this ID3 is actually very easy. You put your foot on the brake and it actually comes up automatically. You twist it into drive and your ID3 is ready to go. It's a very, very nice and convenient function from Volkswagen. This is one of the features you get in Teslas, where you don't need to push a start button. You just get into the car, put your foot on the brake, select into drive, and you're ready to move, which is actually really nice and dope from Volkswagen. This ID3 is also equipped with this huge panoramic glass roof which goes all the way back. The glass itself is not openable, but there's this nice cover that covers the glass when too much sun is getting into the ID3. And I actually like the way to open the cover for the panoramic glass roof. You actually have this slider. To close it, you swipe it backwards and it closes, which is actually good. To open it, so easy, you swipe it forward and it opens, which is actually nice. The steering wheel of the ID3 is actually nice, of course, with this white design scheme on the steering wheel. Now over to the left of the steering wheel are your buttons and controls for the cruise control system and the lane keeping assist and the distance control settings of the ID3, the adaptive cruise control of this ID3, which means that in stop and go traffic, this ID3 can actually accelerate and slow itself down with the moving traffic, which is actually good. Now over on the right side of the steering wheel of this ID3 are your controls for your radio functions. And there's a view button which you swipe, which controls what view you have in the driver's information display of this ID3. So you can actually swipe to display the speed, or you can actually swipe to display the adaptive cruise control of this ID3, which is actually good. So the buttons on the steering wheel of this ID3 are still not physical buttons. They're actually these huge capacitive touch buttons here, and sometimes you're not sure either to press or either to swipe. But in using of this ID3, it's actually really nice and easy to use because you just touch them, and when you touch them, there's a vibrating feedback which you feel when you touch the buttons on this ID3. And so let's check out the back seat of this interior to see how much space is there in the back seat and how comfortable it is in the back seat of the ID3. Okay, so there's still quite a lot of space in the back of this ID3. Remember, it is much more shorter than a Golf, but because it's an electric car and there's no engine up front, the wheelbase is actually much more longer than that of a Golf, which is seen here in the interior of this ID3. Especially even in the back of this ID3, I still have decent knee room and a good amount of headroom, even though the option I have here is this huge panoramic sunroof, which gives this interior an airy feel. 2 USB Type-C for charging your phone, and some 2 pockets here which you can just easily place your phone, and some pockets down here on the seat of this car. The interior of the ID3 is still well put together, even though there are still scratchy plastic materials which are used here, which I usually do not expect from Volkswagen, but that's what you have here in the ID3. And yeah, of course, interior space, everything is actually good. You actually have a flat floor, and all in all, interior space of this ID3 is actually very good. For a car of this size, it's actually very good. Great work from Volkswagen. Okay, so all in all, I'm really excited for what the ID3 stands for and what it has been designed and what it has been built to do, which is actually great. I mean, the ID3 is actually a really nice car. It's going to face, it's already facing a lot of competition from other electric cars. Would it be the next Volkswagen Golf? Well, that depends. It's still open for an argument, and it still depends on how well Volkswagen fine-tune and improve the quality and the overall build of this Volkswagen ID3. And so, of course, I'm going to be driving the ID3 and seeing what it drives like. That will be on a separate video. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification button so you won't miss the driving impressions of the ID3 when that video comes up. But yeah, that's all for the impression and the walk around for the ID3, the interior, the exterior. I actually love the interior of the ID3. It can do better when it comes to material, and the infotainment system actually needs to be better from Volkswagen, which is something that over time I know that they're going to improve through over-the-air updates and some other things which would be improved in the next coming generation of the ID3. But for now, the ID3 is actually a very good car. It's practical, of course. It has all those things that you would want from a daily driver car. It's electric and it has a nice usable battery capacity, which is also good. So that's it for the ID3. Until then, thanks for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.